Have you ever woken up feeling mentally heavy even before the day truly begins, as if your mind is already carrying a quiet weight that you cannot name? Making simple thoughts feel slow, decisions feel harder than they should, and your inner world feel crowded despite nothing specific going wrong. In this audiobook, we will gently explore why your mind feels heavy every day, uncover the hidden mental loads behind this feeling, and slowly guide you toward clarity, lightness, and emotional balance without forcing change or rushing the process. Chapter 1. The silent weight you carry. The heaviness you feel in your mind is rarely dramatic or obvious. It is usually subtle, quiet, and built over time through small, unnoticed pressures that settle inside you without asking for permission. This weight does not come from one big problem, but from many tiny moments where your mind stayed alert, worried, responsible, or emotionally available without proper rest. Over time, these moments stack gently on top of each other until your thoughts begin to feel thick, slow, and difficult to move through, like walking through shallow water instead of air. Most people believe mental heaviness means something is wrong with them, but in reality it often means your mind has been working continuously without enough release. You think about what needs to be done, what might go wrong, what you should have said, and what you must remember, even during moments that appear calm on the surface. This constant background thinking becomes noise, and slowly that noise turns into weight. Your mind was not designed to carry unfinished thoughts all day without pause, yet modern life quietly demands exactly that from you. You hold responsibilities, expectations, emotional reactions, and future planning all at once, rarely allowing your thoughts to fully settle. Even rest can feel unproductive when your mind stays partially engaged, replaying conversations or preparing for things that have not yet happened. This heaviness often shows up as mental fog, low motivation, emotional flatness, or a strange sense of inner tiredness that sleep alone does not fix. You may notice that even enjoyable things feel slightly dull, not because you have lost interest, but because your mental energy is being used elsewhere. Your mind is busy maintaining balance rather than creating clarity. Understanding this is important because mental heaviness is not a failure of strength or discipline. It is a signal. It is your mind's quiet way of telling you that it has been holding too much for too long without space to unload. Once you begin to see this weight as information rather than a flaw, the path toward lightness becomes gentler and more realistic. In the next part, we will continue this chapter by exploring how emotional responsibility and constant self-control slowly add to this invisible load, shaping the way your mind feels every single day. One of the biggest reasons your mind feels heavy is emotional responsibility, the quiet habit of managing not only your own feelings, but also the emotions, moods, and expectations of people around you. You notice tones, reactions, silences, and unspoken needs, and without realizing it, your mind starts adjusting itself to keep everything stable. This constant emotional monitoring slowly consumes mental energy, even on days when nothing outwardly stressful seems to happen. You may tell yourself that being understanding, patient, or emotionally available is just part of who you are, but your mind still pays a cost for holding that role continuously. Each time you suppress your own reaction to avoid conflict or stay strong for someone else, your mind stores that emotion instead of releasing it. Over time, these stored emotions begin to press inward, creating a feeling of inner heaviness that has no clear source. Another hidden contributor is constant self-control, the need to regulate your behavior, thoughts, and responses throughout the day. You monitor what you say, how you react, how productive you are, and whether you are meeting expectations, even when no one is actively judging you. This silent self-management keeps your mind tense, like a muscle that never fully relaxes. Your mind also carries the weight of unresolved decisions, choices that were postponed, options left open, and paths you did not take. Even small decisions, when left unfinished, stay active in the background of your thoughts, quietly asking for attention. This creates a low-level mental pressure that adds to the sense of heaviness without you consciously noticing it. Mental heaviness grows stronger when your mind rarely experiences true mental stillness, moments where nothing needs to be solved, fixed, or prepared for. Even during rest, you may scroll, listen, or distract yourself, keeping your mind lightly stimulated instead of allowing it to settle. Without stillness, your thoughts never fully land, and that constant hovering becomes tiring. Over time, your mind learns to stay alert by default, as if something important might happen at any moment. This state of quiet vigilance feels normal, but it slowly drains clarity, creativity, and emotional ease. The heaviness you feel is not sudden. It is the natural result of a mind that has been on duty for too long. Recognizing these patterns does not mean you need to change everything immediately or stop caring about others or your responsibilities. It simply means you are beginning to see where your mental energy has been going without permission. Awareness itself starts to loosen the weight, creating the first small opening toward lightness. In the next chapter, we will move deeper and explore how overthinking and constant mental replay quietly strengthen this heaviness, shaping the way your thoughts feel from morning until night. Chapter 2. When overthinking becomes a habit. Overthinking often begins quietly, as a way of trying to understand yourself and the world more clearly. But over time, it turns into a background habit that never truly switches off. Your mind keeps revisiting the same ideas, not because they are important, but because they feel unfinished and emotionally loaded. This constant return creates a feeling of mental heaviness, as if your thoughts are circling without ever finding a place to land. At first, overthinking feels useful because it gives the illusion of control. You believe that if you think a little more, analyze a little deeper, or replay something again, clarity will finally appear. Instead of clarity, your mind becomes crowded, carrying multiple versions of the same thought at once. You may notice that your mind prefers familiar worries over empty space. Silence feels uncomfortable, so your thoughts quickly fill it with planning, remembering, or imagining future outcomes. This habit trains your mind to stay active even when there is nothing it truly needs to do. Overthinking also keeps emotions alive longer than they need to be. A feeling that could have passed naturally stays active because your mind keeps touching it again and again. Each time you return to it, the emotion regains strength, adding weight instead of releasing it. Your mind does not overthink because it is broken. It overthinks because it learned that thinking equals safety. Somewhere along the way, it decided that staying alert would prevent disappointment, mistakes, or emotional pain. This belief keeps your thoughts running even when your body is tired. As overthinking continues, your mind loses its sense of completion. Thoughts begin but rarely end, leaving a constant feeling that something is unresolved. This lack of mental closure is one of the deepest sources of daily mental heaviness. You may feel tired without doing much, unfocused despite effort, or emotionally flat without a clear reason. These are not signs of weakness, but signs that your mental space is overcrowded. Your mind is asking for rest, not more effort. The key realization is that not every thought needs your attention. Some thoughts are simply echoes of habit, not messages that require action. Learning to let these thoughts pass without engagement is the beginning of mental lightness. In the next part, we will continue this chapter by exploring how emotional attachment to thoughts keeps overthinking alive, and why your mind struggles to let go even when you want peace. Overthinking continues because your mind forms emotional attachments to certain thoughts, especially those connected to fear, regret, or uncertainty. These thoughts feel important, so your mind treats them as unfinished business that must be revisited. Each return strengthens the habit, making the thought feel heavier and harder to release. Your mind holds on to these thoughts, believing that letting go means losing control. It fears that if it stops replaying, something will be missed, repeated, or misunderstood. This fear keeps the mental loop alive, even when the thinking no longer serves you. Emotional attachment makes thoughts feel personal rather than temporary. A thought stops being just an idea and starts feeling like a reflection of who you are or what might happen to you. This personal connection gives overthinking its emotional weight. You may notice that certain thoughts return more often than others. They are usually linked to situations where you felt powerless, unheard, or unsure. Your mind revisits them, hoping to rewrite the outcome or protect you next time. Overthinking also grows stronger when your mind confuses awareness with control. You believe that staying mentally engaged will somehow prevent discomfort or mistakes. In reality, this constant engagement only increases mental tension. As these patterns continue, your mind rarely feels settled. Even when a problem is gone, the thinking pattern remains active. This creates a feeling of carrying something invisible that never fully leaves you. Mental heaviness deepens when thoughts are emotionally charged but never resolved. They stay open, quietly demanding attention in the background of your day. Over time, this drains emotional energy and reduces mental clarity. Letting go does not mean ignoring your thoughts or emotions. It means allowing them to exist without repeatedly pulling them back into focus. This gentle distance weakens the emotional grip that keeps overthinking alive. In the next chapter, we will move forward and explore how constant pressure to make decisions and stay productive creates another layer of mental heaviness that quietly shapes your daily experience. Chapter 3. The pressure to always decide. Your mind feels heavy not because life is complicated, but because it is rarely allowed to stay undecided. From the moment you wake up, your thoughts are pulled into choosing, adjusting, correcting, and planning, even before you feel fully present. This constant demand to decide quietly trains your mind to stay alert, as if every moment carries consequences that must be handled immediately. Even small decisions ask for more energy than you realize. What to say, how to respond, whether to act now or wait, and how others might interpret your choices all pass through your mind repeatedly. None of these decisions feel heavy alone, but together they create a continuous mental strain that slowly becomes exhausting. Your mind also struggles because decisions no longer feel finished once they are made. After choosing, you replay the outcome, question alternatives, and imagine different results, wondering if something better was possible. This inability to mentally close decisions leaves your thoughts open, creating a lingering sense of unease. Another hidden weight comes from decisions shaped by fear rather than clarity. When you choose to avoid disappointment, conflict, or judgment, part of you feels unheard. Your mind remembers these moments and keeps returning to them, searching for the voice it suppressed. Over time, decision-making becomes emotionally loaded rather than practical. Every choice starts to feel like a reflection of your worth, intelligence, or future stability. This emotional attachment turns simple decisions into mental burdens. Your mind grows tired not because it cannot decide, but because it believes it must decide correctly every time. There is little room for mistakes, rest, or uncertainty. This pressure quietly removes softness from your thinking. When decisions pile up without space to breathe, your mind begins to resist choosing at all. You may delay, avoid, or feel numb, not because you do not care, but because your mental system is overloaded. This resistance is often misunderstood as lack of motivation. Mental heaviness eases when decisions are allowed to be incomplete and human. Not everything needs immediate clarity or perfect outcomes. When your mind learns that uncertainty is safe, some of its weight naturally begins to lift. In the next part, we will continue this chapter by exploring how the pressure to stay productive and constantly useful deepens this mental load, even during moments that appear calm. The pressure to stay productive quietly adds another layer to the heaviness you feel in your mind, because productivity today is no longer about doing enough, but about never stopping. Even when you complete tasks, your mind immediately shifts to what remains undone, creating the feeling that rest must be earned rather than allowed. This constant forward pull keeps your thoughts slightly tense, as if pausing would cause everything to fall behind. Your worth slowly becomes tied to how much you accomplish. On days when you move slowly, feel tired, or simply want to be still, your mind fills with guilt instead of relief. This inner judgment consumes mental energy, making rest feel stressful rather than restorative. The mind also carries invisible productivity pressure through comparison. You see others moving faster, achieving more, or appearing more focused, and without realizing it, your mind measures itself against these images. This comparison creates quiet self-doubt, adding weight even on days when you are already doing enough. Another source of heaviness is the fear of wasting time. Your mind feels the need to use every moment wisely, even moments meant for recovery. When rest is treated as something that must be justified, your thoughts never fully soften. Productivity pressure also prevents emotional processing. When you move quickly from one task to the next, emotions do not get space to settle or release. They stay active beneath the surface, silently draining mental clarity. Over time, your mind begins to confuse stillness with failure. Sitting quietly feels uncomfortable because it lacks visible output. This discomfort pushes your thoughts to search for something to fix, plan, or improve, even when nothing is required. Mental heaviness deepens when your mind is always preparing for the next step instead of fully finishing the current one. Tasks end, but the mental state does not. This lack of closure keeps your thoughts busy long after the work is done. Relief begins when productivity is seen as seasonal rather than constant. Some moments are meant for effort, and others for slowing down. When your mind accepts that rest has value, pressure begins to loosen naturally. In the next chapter, we will shift focus and explore how emotional suppression and unexpressed feelings quietly build weight inside the mind, shaping how heavy your inner world feels each day. Chapter 4. The Feelings You Never Fully Express. Your mind often feels heavy because many of your emotions never find a clear way out. Not because they are intense, but because they are quietly ignored. Throughout the day you feel irritation, sadness, disappointment, or emotional fatigue, yet you move past them quickly to stay functional and composed. These emotions do not disappear. They remain stored inside, creating a subtle but persistent weight within your inner world. You may have learned, consciously or unconsciously, that expressing emotions slows things down or creates complications. Staying calm, controlled, and emotionally steady becomes a survival skill, especially when life demands reliability. Over time, this habit trains your mind to hold emotions internally rather than letting them move through you naturally. When emotions are suppressed, your mind works constantly in the background to keep them contained. This effort is quiet but continuous, using mental energy to maintain control and stability. Even when you are not thinking about your feelings directly, your mind is still managing them, and this ongoing effort slowly creates exhaustion. Unexpressed emotions often return in indirect ways. They may show up as overthinking, body tension, irritability, or a sense of mental fog that has no clear explanation. Your mind is attempting to process what your emotions were never allowed to finish expressing. Another source of heaviness comes from emotions you minimized or dismissed. You told yourself that something was not important, that you should be stronger, or that others had it worse. While this helped you move forward in the moment, it taught your mind to ignore its own emotional signals. Over time, your mind becomes cautious around emotional depth. It avoids fully feeling things by staying analytical, busy, or distracted. This emotional distance protects you from discomfort, but it also prevents emotional release, keeping the inner pressure alive. Mental heaviness grows when emotions have no safe place to land. Without acknowledgement, they remain active beneath the surface, shaping your mood, energy, and clarity. You may feel tired, disconnected, or emotionally flat without knowing why. Relief does not come from dramatic expression or emotional overwhelm. It begins with simple recognition, allowing yourself to feel without judging or fixing. When emotions are allowed to exist, the mental effort required to suppress them slowly fades. As this effort fades, your mind begins to feel lighter, not because life changes, but because you are no longer carrying emotions alone. In the next part, we will continue this chapter by exploring how long-term emotional holding quietly shapes your identity and sense of self over time. When emotions remain unexpressed for a long time, they do not just stay as feelings, they slowly begin shaping how you see yourself. Your mind starts forming beliefs around what is acceptable to feel and what must be hidden, and over time this creates a quiet inner split. One part of you continues functioning, while another part stays unheard, carrying emotional weight in silence. You may begin to describe yourself as emotionally tired without knowing exactly why. This tiredness does not come from sadness alone, but from the effort of constantly holding emotions inside. Your mind learns to stay guarded, even in moments where it is safe to relax. Long-term emotional holding often creates distance between what you feel and what you show. You respond politely while feeling overwhelmed, stay calm while feeling hurt, and move forward while something inside you lags behind. This misalignment quietly drains mental energy and contributes to the heaviness you feel each day. Over time, your inner world becomes crowded with emotions that were never completed. Each unexpressed feeling remains open, waiting for acknowledgement. Your mind carries these open emotional loops alongside daily responsibilities, making even simple days feel heavier than they should. This emotional holding can also blur your sense of identity. When you repeatedly suppress certain feelings, you lose clarity about what you truly want, need, or value. Your mind becomes focused on coping rather than understanding itself. Another subtle effect is emotional numbness. When emotions are held back too often, your mind may dull emotional intensity to protect itself. While this reduces discomfort, it also reduces joy, curiosity, and emotional connection. Mental heaviness deepens when your mind cannot distinguish between safety and habit. Even when expression would not cause harm, your thoughts still choose silence. This automatic suppression keeps the emotional load active without your awareness. Healing begins when emotions are allowed to exist without explanation or justification. You do not need to act on every feeling. You only need to acknowledge it honestly. This simple recognition slowly restores alignment between your inner and outer world. As alignment returns, your mind no longer needs to work as hard to contain emotions. Energy previously used for suppression becomes available for clarity and calm. This shift does not happen suddenly, but it begins the process of lightening your inner load. In the next chapter, We will explore how constant self-judgment and harsh inner dialogue quietly add another layer to mental heaviness, shaping how you think about yourself every day. Chapter 5. The Voice That Never Leaves You. Your mind often feels heavy because of the constant inner voice that follows you everywhere, quietly judging, correcting, and questioning almost everything you do. This voice comments on your choices, your pace, your emotions, and even your rest, rarely allowing you to feel fully at ease with yourself. Over time, listening to this voice becomes so normal that you forget how much mental energy it consumes. This inner dialogue is not always harsh in obvious ways. Sometimes it sounds reasonable, practical, or even protective, reminding you to do better, be careful, or not make mistakes. Yet even when it speaks softly, it keeps your mind in a state of evaluation rather than acceptance. Self-judgment often begins as a way to improve or stay safe. Your mind believes that constant correction will prevent failure, embarrassment, or regret. What it does not realize is that this ongoing self-monitoring slowly turns into pressure. You may notice that even after completing something well, your mind quickly finds what could have been done better. Praise feels brief, while criticism lingers. This imbalance trains your thoughts to focus on shortcomings rather than progress. Over time, this inner voice shapes how you experience daily life. Simple actions feel heavier because they are accompanied by mental commentary. Instead of being present, your mind stays busy measuring, comparing, and reviewing. This self-talk also affects how you process emotions. When you feel tired, sad, or unmotivated, the voice may label these states as weakness or failure. Rather than allowing emotions to pass, your mind adds judgment on top of them, doubling the weight. Mental heaviness grows when your mind rarely feels like a safe place to rest. If every thought is examined and every feeling questioned, there is little space for ease. Your inner world becomes a place of constant effort rather than comfort. Many people believe they need this inner critic to stay disciplined or successful. In reality, discipline without compassion becomes exhausting. The mind responds better to guidance than to constant pressure. Lightness begins when you notice the tone of your inner voice without immediately believing it. Not every thought deserves agreement. When self-judgment is observed rather than obeyed, its grip slowly weakens. In the next part, we will continue this chapter by exploring where this inner voice comes from and why your mind learned to speak to itself this way in the first place. The inner voice you hear did not appear on its own. It was shaped slowly through years of experiences, expectations, and reactions from the world around you. Your mind learned how to speak to itself by observing how it was spoken to, corrected, praised, or judged in moments that mattered. Over time, these external voices became internal, forming a familiar tone that now feels like your own. This voice often carries the language of responsibility and survival. It learned to push you forward when slowing down felt unsafe, and to criticize you when mistakes felt costly. What once helped you adapt has stayed active long after the original situations passed. Your mind keeps this voice close because it believes it protects you. It thinks that if it stays alert, critical, and watchful, you will avoid failure or disappointment. Unfortunately, this protection comes at the cost of peace. You may notice that this voice becomes louder during rest or quiet moments. When there is nothing external to focus on, your mind turns inward and fills the space with commentary. This is why silence can sometimes feel heavier than noise. Over time, the inner voice stops reacting only to real situations and begins anticipating imagined ones. It prepares you for judgment that may never come and mistakes that may never happen. This anticipation keeps your mind tense, even when life is calm. The heaviness you feel grows when this voice is never questioned. Thoughts are treated as facts rather than mental habits. Your mind forgets that thinking is something it does, not something it must always obey. This voice also limits emotional recovery. Even when a moment has passed, the commentary continues, analyzing what it meant about you. This prevents closure and keeps emotional weight active longer than necessary. Change begins not by silencing the voice, but by changing your relationship with it. You learn to hear it without immediately responding. This small pause weakens its authority. As you create distance from this inner dialogue, your mind slowly discovers a quieter layer beneath it, a place where thoughts can pass without judgment and feelings can exist without explanation. This space is not empty, it is restorative. In the next chapter, we will explore how mental exhaustion builds when your mind never fully recovers, even after sleep, and why rest alone often fails to remove the heaviness you feel each day. Chapter 6. When rest is not enough. Your mind can feel heavy even after a full night of sleep, because rest and recovery are not the same thing, and most people confuse the two without realizing it. Sleep restores the body, but the mind often wakes up carrying unresolved thoughts, emotional tension, and mental habits that were never allowed to settle. This is why you can open your eyes in the morning feeling physically okay, yet mentally burdened before the day even begins. Mental recovery requires more than simply stopping activity. Your mind needs moments where it is not analyzing, replaying, or preparing for what comes next, moments where nothing is expected of it at all. When these moments are missing, sleep becomes a pause instead of a reset, and the heaviness quietly follows you into the next day. You may notice that your thoughts start working the instant you wake up. Before your body fully rises, your mind begins listing responsibilities, unfinished tasks, and worries that feel urgent and demanding. This immediate mental engagement interrupts recovery, making you feel tired before the day has truly started. Another reason rest feels ineffective is emotional carryover from previous days. Feelings that were ignored or postponed do not disappear overnight. They remain active beneath the surface. Even during sleep, your mind continues holding this emotional tension, preventing deep mental restoration. Modern rest is often filled with stimulation that looks harmless but keeps the mind alert. Scrolling, watching, listening, and background noise give the illusion of relaxation while still feeding the mind information. This gentle stimulation prevents thoughts from fully settling, leaving mental fatigue untouched. Your mind struggles to recover when it believes rest must be earned. If slowing down feels undeserved, part of your mind stays vigilant, quietly checking whether you are allowed to relax. This inner monitoring keeps your thoughts tense, blocking genuine mental ease. Over time, your mind forgets how to disengage naturally. It remains partially active even during quiet moments, scanning for what needs attention next. This low-level alertness slowly drains clarity, focus, and emotional balance. Mental heaviness grows when recovery is delayed again and again. Each day adds a small amount of unresolved mental load, and without true release, this accumulation becomes noticeable. You begin to feel foggy or emotionally flat without a clear reason. True mental rest begins when your mind is given permission to stop performing. Allowing thoughts to rise and fall without chasing them creates space for recovery. This is not about forcing calm, but about letting effort gently soften. As this permission becomes familiar, your mind slowly relearns how to rest deeply. In the next part, we will continue this chapter by exploring how long-term mental fatigue builds quietly over time and why ignoring its early signs keeps the heaviness locked in place. Long-term mental fatigue builds so quietly that most people do not notice it until heaviness becomes their normal state. Your mind adapts to tiredness by lowering sensitivity, convincing you that this dull, foggy feeling is just how life feels now. Because the change happens slowly, you rarely question it, even as clarity and emotional sharpness fade. Early signs of mental fatigue are often misunderstood. Difficulty focusing, emotional irritability, forgetfulness, or a constant desire to escape into distraction seems small at first. Instead of rest, your mind responds by pushing harder, believing effort will fix what exhaustion has created. This pattern teaches your mind to override its own signals. When tiredness appears, you ignore it. When heaviness rises, you normalize it. Over time, your mind stops expecting relief and learns to operate in a depleted state. Mental fatigue deepens when recovery is postponed repeatedly. You tell yourself you will rest later after one more task, one more responsibility, one more day. That later rarely arrives, and the load continues to accumulate quietly. Your mind also becomes less flexible under chronic fatigue. Small challenges feel overwhelming, and emotional reactions feel stronger than necessary. This is not weakness, it is the nervous system operating without proper recovery. Another effect of long-term fatigue is loss of emotional perspective. When your mind is tired, everything feels heavier and more permanent than it truly is. Problems seem larger, solutions feel distant, and hope feels muted. Mental heaviness becomes self-reinforcing. Fatigue reduces clarity, reduced clarity increases stress, and stress further drains mental energy. Without interruption, this cycle quietly sustains itself. Breaking this pattern does not require dramatic change. It begins with noticing tiredness without judgment and responding with softness instead of pressure. Small moments of genuine mental pause slowly rebuild capacity. Recovery deepens when your mind feels safe to slow down. Safety does not come from finishing everything, but from knowing nothing bad will happen if you rest. This belief allows mental energy to return naturally. As mental fatigue eases, your thoughts regain space and flexibility. Clarity returns gradually, not all at once. In the next chapter, we will explore how constant worry about the future quietly pulls your mind away from the present, adding another layer to the heaviness you feel each day. Chapter 7. Living too far ahead of the present. Your mind feels heavy when it spends most of its time living in a future that has not yet arrived. Instead of resting in the moment you are actually in, your thoughts move ahead, preparing for what might happen, what could go wrong, or what you will need to handle next. This constant forward movement keeps your mind slightly tense, as if it is always late for something that has not even begun. Future-focused thinking often starts as a form of responsibility. You plan ahead to stay safe, organized, and prepared. Over time, however, this habit grows into a mental pattern where your mind rarely settles into now, treating the present as something to get through rather than something to experience. When your thoughts are always ahead, the present moment feels thin and unsatisfying. Even calm situations carry a sense of urgency because part of your attention is already elsewhere. This divided awareness quietly drains mental energy and creates the feeling of inner heaviness. Your mind also imagines future conversations, outcomes, and reactions. You rehearse what you might say, how others might respond, and how you will handle situations that may never happen. Each imagined scenario keeps your nervous system engaged, as if the future is already demanding your attention. Living ahead of the present also weakens emotional recovery. Before one experience fully ends, your mind moves on to the next concern. There is little space to absorb relief, satisfaction, or closure, so emotions remain unfinished and active. Another layer of heaviness comes from uncertainty about the future. When outcomes are unclear, your mind keeps returning to them, hoping repetition will create certainty. Instead of answers, this repetition creates mental pressure and fatigue. Over time, your mind forgets how to fully arrive in the present. Stillness feels uncomfortable because it lacks preparation. Silence feels unproductive because it does not point forward. This discomfort pushes your thoughts back into planning mode. Mental heaviness grows when the present moment is never enough. Your mind believes relief exists somewhere ahead, after something is resolved or completed. This belief keeps you mentally chasing rather than settling. Relief begins when the present moment is allowed to be sufficient, even if it is imperfect. You do not need to solve the future to be here now. When your mind rests where your body already is, some of the weight naturally loosens. In the next part, we will continue this chapter by exploring how fear of uncertainty keeps your mind anchored in the future, and why learning to tolerate not knowing is essential for mental lightness. Fear of uncertainty is one of the strongest reasons your mind keeps moving into the future instead of resting where you are. When outcomes are unclear, your thoughts try to fill the gap by predicting, preparing, and imagining every possible direction things could take. This constant forecasting gives the illusion of control, but it quietly keeps your mind tense and restless. Your mind struggles with uncertainty because it wants guarantees. It wants to know that things will work out, that pain will be avoided, and that effort will be rewarded. When these guarantees are not available, your thoughts keep returning to the same questions, hoping repetition will somehow produce certainty. This fear trains your mind to stay alert, even during calm moments. Instead of enjoying stability, your thoughts search for what might disrupt it. This habit keeps your nervous system engaged, making it difficult to feel fully safe in the present. Uncertainty also affects how you experience decisions and waiting. When answers are delayed, your mind fills the space with worry and anticipation. Waiting becomes heavy because your thoughts never pause. They keep rehearsing possible outcomes without resolution. Over time, your mind begins to associate stillness with risk. Doing nothing feels unsafe because it leaves space for the unknown. This belief pushes your thoughts into constant activity, even when no action is required. Living with unresolved uncertainty also weakens emotional balance. Hope and fear blend together, creating a background tension that never fully releases. Your mind carries this tension quietly, adding to the feeling of daily heaviness. Mental heaviness deepens when your mind believes it must solve the future before it can relax. This belief delays peace indefinitely because the future never fully arrives. There is always another unknown waiting. Learning to tolerate uncertainty is not about giving up control. It is about recognizing what control is actually possible. Some things can be planned, but many things can only be lived as they happen. Accepting this distinction softens mental effort. Relief begins when your mind allows questions to exist without immediate answers. Not knowing becomes something you can sit with rather than something you must escape. This tolerance creates space for calm. As your mind learns to stay with the present despite uncertainty, the future loses some of its grip. The heaviness eases, not because life becomes predictable, but because your mind no longer needs to chase certainty to feel safe. In the next chapter, we will explore how emotional attachment to the past quietly pulls your mind backward, creating another form of mental weight that shapes how you feel each day. Chapter 8. When the past still feels present. Your mind feels heavy when parts of the past are still emotionally active inside you, even if life has moved forward on the surface. Memories do not only live as images or events, they live as feelings, beliefs, and unfinished emotional responses that your mind continues to carry. When these inner traces remain unresolved, the past quietly follows you into the present. Your mind often revisits past moments, not because you want to relive them, but because something in them was never completed. An emotion was not expressed, a boundary was not set, or an experience was not fully understood at the time. These moments stay open inside your mind, asking for attention long after they are over. Sometimes the past returns subtly, through reactions that feel stronger than the situation deserves. A small comment triggers discomfort, a familiar tone creates anxiety, or a situation feels heavy without a clear reason. Your mind is responding not just to now, but to what feels similar to then. The mind holds onto the past as a way to protect you. It remembers what hurt, what failed, and what felt unsafe, believing that staying aware will prevent repetition. This protective function keeps emotional memory active, even when the danger is no longer present. Over time, this backward pull drains mental energy. Part of your attention stays anchored to what happened before, while another part tries to stay present. This split awareness creates a sense of inner fatigue, as if your mind is stretched across different timelines. Emotional attachment to the past also shapes how you see yourself. Old mistakes, disappointments, or limitations quietly become part of your identity. Your mind repeats familiar stories, making it difficult to see who you are beyond what you have been through. Mental heaviness increases when the past is treated as proof rather than experience. When old outcomes are used to predict the future, your thoughts stay cautious and restricted. This limits openness and keeps your mind guarded. Letting go of the past does not mean forgetting or denying what happened. It means allowing the emotional charge to soften so the memory can rest. This happens gradually, through awareness rather than force. Relief begins when the past is recognized as something that shaped you, not something that defines you. When your mind no longer needs to carry old experiences as warnings, space begins to open. In the next part, we will continue this chapter by exploring how regret and self-blame keep the past emotionally alive, and why releasing them is essential for mental lightness. Regret and self-blame are the forces that keep the past emotionally alive long after the moment itself has ended. Your mind replays old choices, words, or missed opportunities, not to torture you, but to search for a version of events where things turned out better. Each replay carries the same question beneath it: what if I had done something differently? Self-blame feels heavy because it turns memory into judgment. Instead of seeing the past as something that happened within certain limits, your mind treats it as a personal failure that reflects who you are. This judgment keeps emotions active, preventing memories from settling into rest. Your mind often ignores the context you were in at the time. It forgets what you knew, what you felt, and what resources you actually had. Looking back with today's awareness, it demands answers from a version of you who could not possibly have given them. Regret also creates the illusion that the past is still fixable. Your mind believes that if it thinks long enough, it might find a way to rewrite what already happened. This search keeps your attention tied backward, draining energy from the present. Over time, repeated self-blame becomes a mental habit. Even new experiences are filtered through old mistakes, making you cautious, guarded, or overly self-correcting. The past begins shaping your behavior without your awareness. This constant inner correction exhausts your mind. Instead of learning and moving forward, your thoughts stay stuck reviewing and punishing. Mental heaviness grows because there is no emotional closure. Healing does not come from forgiving yourself perfectly or suddenly letting go. It comes from recognizing that regret is information, not identity. It shows that you care, not that you are broken. When regret is allowed to exist without being replayed endlessly, its intensity softens. The memory remains, but the emotional grip loosens. Your mind no longer needs to carry it as a warning. Relief deepens when you allow yourself to see growth instead of failure. Every experience, even painful ones, contributed to who you are now. When your mind accepts this, the past begins to lose its weight. As self-blame releases, mental energy returns to the present. In the next chapter, we will explore how constant comparison with others quietly steals peace and adds another layer to the heaviness you feel every day. Chapter 9. Measuring yourself against others. Your mind feels heavy when it is constantly measuring your life against someone else's progress, pace, or success. Comparison quietly shifts your attention away from your own experience and places it onto external standards that were never meant to define you. This constant measuring creates inner pressure, because no comparison ever truly feels complete or fair. Your mind compares automatically, often without intention. You notice what others have achieved, how confident they appear, or how smoothly their lives seem to move forward. Even when you know these images are partial or curated, your mind still absorbs them as reference points. Comparison becomes heavy because it ignores context. It overlooks different starting points, unseen struggles, and personal limits. Your mind judges your entire journey using fragments of someone else's story, creating a distorted sense of where you should be. This habit also turns growth into a race. Instead of noticing how far you have come, your mind focuses on how far behind it believes you are. Progress feels invisible, while gaps feel urgent and uncomfortable. Over time, comparison reshapes motivation into pressure. You no longer move forward because something feels meaningful, but because standing still feels unacceptable. This pressure drains joy and replaces it with quiet anxiety. Comparison also affects self-worth. On good days, it may create temporary confidence, but on difficult days, it deepens self-doubt. Your sense of value becomes unstable because it depends on factors outside your control. Mental heaviness increases when your mind constantly scans for evidence that you are not enough. Even achievements feel incomplete when they are immediately compared to someone else's success. Satisfaction becomes short-lived or unreachable. Your mind also forgets that comparison rarely shows the full picture. What looks like ease or success often carries hidden effort, sacrifice, or struggle. Yet your thoughts still treat appearances as reality. Relief begins when comparison is recognized as a habit, not a truth. You do not need to stop noticing others. You only need to stop using them as measurements for your worth. This shift returns attention to your own path. When your mind measures progress internally rather than externally, heaviness begins to loosen. Growth becomes personal again, and effort feels meaningful rather than pressured. In the next part, we will continue this chapter by exploring how social expectations and the need for approval quietly reinforce comparison and mental strain. Social expectations quietly strengthen comparison by telling your mind how you should live, grow, and succeed. Even when these expectations are not spoken directly, they exist through culture, family standards, timelines, and unspoken rules about where you should be by a certain age or stage. Your mind absorbs these standards and uses them as checkpoints, creating pressure that feels personal, even when it is not. The need for approval deepens this weight. When your sense of progress depends on how others respond, your mind stays alert, scanning for validation or signs of acceptance. Each reaction, comment, or silence becomes information your thoughts must interpret, adding another layer of mental effort. Your mind may begin shaping choices around how they will look rather than how they will feel. You choose paths that appear respectable, impressive, or acceptable, even if they do not align with your inner needs. This misalignment creates inattention because part of you knows the direction is not fully yours. Approval seeking also keeps your thoughts future-focused. You imagine how decisions will be judged, explained, or compared. This anticipation pulls you away from the present and replaces ease with constant evaluation. Over time, social expectations blur your internal compass. Instead of asking what feels right, your mind asks what will be approved. This shift weakens self-trust and strengthens dependence on external measures. Mental heaviness increases when your mind believes it must earn worth through performance. Rest feels unproductive, pauses feel risky, and authenticity feels unsafe. The pressure to appear capable becomes more important than actually feeling well. You may notice that even positive feedback does not fully relieve this weight. Praise fades quickly, and the mind returns to chasing the next sign of approval. This cycle keeps satisfaction just out of reach. Relief begins when approval is no longer treated as proof of value. You can appreciate recognition without building your identity on it. This separation allows your mind to relax its constant monitoring. As expectations lose their grip, comparison weakens naturally. Your focus returns inward, where progress is measured by alignment rather than appearance. This shift restores a sense of steadiness and quiet confidence. In the next chapter, we will explore how unresolved identity questions and not knowing who you are becoming quietly add another layer to the heaviness your mind carries every day. Chapter 10. Not knowing who you are becoming. Sometimes your mind feels heavy, not because something is wrong, but because you are standing between versions of yourself. You are no longer who you used to be, yet you are not fully clear about who you are becoming. This space in between feels uncertain, and uncertainty quietly weighs on the mind. Your mind prefers stable identity because it creates a sense of control. Knowing who you are helps you decide, explain yourself, and feel grounded. When that identity starts shifting, even slightly, your thoughts become restless, searching for something familiar to hold on to. You may notice this as a subtle discomfort rather than clear confusion. Life continues, responsibilities are handled, yet something feels undefined inside you. This lack of inner clarity drains mental energy because your mind is constantly trying to orient itself. Growth often creates this heaviness. As you evolve, old motivations lose their power, and familiar goals no longer excite you in the same way. Your mind interprets this change as loss, even though it may actually be expansion. Not knowing who you are becoming also affects how safe choices feel. Decisions seem heavier because they feel connected to identity rather than simple preference. Your mind worries that the wrong choice might lock you into a future that does not fit. This uncertainty can make you emotionally distant from yourself. You keep moving forward, but without a clear inner reference point. That distance creates quiet fatigue, as if you are carrying questions without answers. Your mind often responds by demanding clarity too soon. It pressures you to define yourself, find purpose, or choose direction immediately. This pressure adds weight, because identity needs time to form through experience, not force. Mental heaviness grows when you believe you should already have answers. This belief ignores the natural rhythm of life, where periods of not knowing are essential for real change. Your mind turns transition into self-judgment. Relief begins when uncertainty is allowed to exist without urgency. Not knowing who you are becoming does not mean you are lost. It often means you are changing in ways that cannot yet be named. This understanding softens the mental strain. When you stop forcing definition, your mind slowly relaxes. Identity begins to unfold naturally, shaped by what feels true rather than what feels expected. In the final part, we will gently bring everything together and explore how awareness, not control, is what truly releases the heaviness your mind has been carrying every day. Your mind feels heavy when you are standing in a space where identity is still forming and nothing feels fully defined yet. You are no longer who you used to be, but you are also not ready to name who you are becoming. This in-between state quietly asks your mind to hold uncertainty every day, and that holding itself becomes tiring. Throughout this journey, you may have noticed that heaviness was never caused by one single problem. It was created by many small pressures working together: emotional holding, overthinking, self-judgment, comparison, future worry, and the fear of not having clear answers. Each one added weight, and together they shaped how your mind learned to function. When identity feels unclear, the mind tries to compensate by controlling more. It thinks harder, plans further ahead, and judges itself more strictly, believing clarity will arrive through effort. In reality, this effort often adds strain rather than relief. Not knowing who you are becoming does not mean you are lost. It often means old versions of you are falling away, while new ones are still taking shape. This phase feels uncomfortable because the mind prefers certainty, but growth rarely arrives with clear labels. The heaviness begins to soften when you stop demanding definition from yourself. You do not need to explain who you are becoming in order to be valid where you are. Allowing yourself to exist without a fixed answer gives your mind permission to rest. Clarity does not come from forcing identity into words. It comes from lived experience, from noticing what feels honest, what feels draining, and what feels quietly right over time. Your mind relaxes when it realizes it does not have to decide everything at once. Mental lightness grows when you treat uncertainty as a temporary space rather than a permanent flaw. This space is where change happens, even when it feels slow or confusing. When the mind stops fighting this phase, the inner pressure begins to release. You are not behind for not knowing exactly who you are becoming. You are in process, and process is not meant to feel polished. Accepting this removes the urgency that keeps your thoughts heavy. As this audiobook comes to an end, remember that your mind does not need a finished identity to feel calm. It needs patience, awareness, and permission to unfold naturally. When you allow yourself to become without rushing the answer, the weight you have been carrying finally begins to ease. Your mind was never broken. It was simply waiting for permission to stop forcing clarity and start trusting the process of becoming.